Welcome to the virtual public information meeting for the expansion of US Highway 85 from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, starting at the I-94 interchange and extending north to the junction of North Dakota Highway 200. My name is Troy Ripplinger, and on behalf of Apex Engineering Group and the North Dakota Department of Transportation, I would like to thank you for taking the time to view the presentation that we have prepared for this upcoming project. The goals of this meeting are to provide an update on the overall US Highway 85 project, to discuss the proposed improvements that are currently being designed from I-94 to North Dakota 200, explain and provide an overview of the right-of-way acquisition process, and to review the project schedule and discuss the next steps. The US 85 project has been in development for almost 10 years. The project first kicked off in October of 2015 with the environmental and planning phase. Several public input meetings were held in 2015 and 2016, with a public hearing in conjunction with a draft environmental impact statement in May of 2018. The environmental and planning phase concluded with the final environmental impact statement and record of decision being completed in February of 2019. Construction started shortly after the environmental impact statement was finalized, with the first construction project replacing the Long X Bridge in 2019 and 2020. The next project was completed in 2024 that widened the highway to 4 lanes from the Long X Bridge north to Watford City. The next set of projects from North Dakota 200 to Long X Bridge are currently planned for construction starting in 2026. This next segment of the US 85 4-lane expansion project begins at the I-94 interchange and extends approximately 31 miles north to the intersection of North Dakota Highway 200. The proposed project is divided into 3 project segments for construction. Beginning at the south end, the first project segment begins at the I-94 interchange and extends north approximately 10 miles to near mile point 86. The second project segment begins at mile point 86 and extends north approximately 9 miles through Fairfield to near the Gorham Junction near mile point 94. The third project segment begins near the Gorham Junction and extends north approximately 12 miles to the intersection of North Dakota Highway 200. The 4-lane widening will occur on either the east or west side of the existing highway, depending on where you're at along the corridor. The different colors on the map represent the side of the highway the widening is proposed, green representing west side widening and orange representing east side widening. We will review these locations in more detail later in the presentation. The proposed 4-lane expansion will occur by building a parallel roadway adjacent to the existing highway, offset 84 feet to either the west or east side. The existing roadway will remain in place and the outside shoulder will be widened to 8 feet. A depressed grass median will separate the 2 roadways and the speed limit will be 70 miles per hour. Very similar to other 4-lane divided highways across the state, like US Highway 2 or US Highway 83. The 4-lane divided depressed median section will transition to a 4-lane flush median section through Fairfield, as shown on the typical section below. The speed limit will be reduced to 45 miles per hour through Fairfield. Let's start off by reviewing the South Project segment PCN 24243. This project begins at the I-94 interchange and extends north 10 miles to roughly mile point 86. As you can see on the map, this project has widening planned along both the west and east sides of the existing highway. The reason the widening transitions back and forth is because of the various commercial and residential properties located along both sides of the highway. One of the goals of this project was to avoid impacts to developed property, therefore requiring the widening to shift back and forth to avoid those types of impacts. Next, we will look at each of these areas in more detail. The first area we'll start with is located between mile point 76 and 80. As you can see on this aerial photo, there is existing commercial development located along the east side of the highway. So in this area, the widening is planned along the west side. When I advance the slide, you can see how the proposed 4-lane expansion will look along the west side, avoiding impacts to the adjacent commercial properties. As we proceed to the north, near mile point 79, the widening continues along the west side of the roadway. However, we have some residential properties located along the west side of the road. Therefore, in these areas, we're planning to shift the widening over to the east side. When I advance the slide, you can see how the roadway will transition to shift the widening to the east side, avoiding impacts to the residential properties and an oil pipeline valve setting that you will see in the center of the aerial photo. You to proceed north along the corridor to 6 Mile Corner, and again we have several residential properties located along the west side of the roadway. In this area, the roadway will transition back to the east side around the curves to avoid impacts to the residential properties. Continuing on another mile to the north near mile point 83, just north of the 6 Mile Corner, now we have residential development along the east side of the highway. In this area, the widening will transition back to the west side and continue along the west side north to near mile point 85. At mile point 85, the widening will then transition back to the east side to avoid the St. Boniface and St. Mary's Cemetery and St. Demetrius Catholic Church and will remain on the east side to Fairfield. That leads us into the second project segment, which begins 10 miles north of I-94 near mile point 86 and extends north approximately 9 miles to near the Gorham Junction. PCN 24-244 will construct a new northbound roadway along the east side of the existing highway up until approximately 1 mile south of Fairfield. At this point, the roadway will transition to a 4-lane divided flush median section, and the existing highway will be widened on both sides to accommodate the additional lanes. North of Fairfield, the proposed design will transition back into a 4-lane divided highway with a depressed median, with the new roadway west of the existing highway. This slide shows how the design will transition from a divided depressed median on the east side of US 85 to transition into the flush median section. This transition will occur just south of the St. Demetrius Church. The 4-lane divided flush median section will continue throughout this area on the south side of Fairfield. Through Fairfield, the roadway will continue as the flush median section and will transition back to a 4-lane divided depressed median on the north side of Fairfield, with the widening along the west side of the highway. Through Fairfield, multiple typical sections are currently being evaluated, including an urban roadway section with curb and gutter. Through Fairfield, the speed limits will be reduced to 45 miles per hour. The third and final project segment, PCN 24-245, begins near the Gorham Junction and extends north to the North Dakota Highway 200 intersection. As you can see on the map, this project has widening planned along the west side of the existing highway the entire length of the project. There are a few U.S. Forest Service lands along the segment that will require an expanded highway easement. There will also be some impacts to existing cattle passes and stock dams that we will be coordinating with the adjacent landowners during the right-of-way acquisition process. So next, let's discuss the process for the right-of-way acquisition that will be needed for this project. With any planned highway infrastructure widening project, additional land is needed by the North Dakota Department of Transportation to build the expanded highway on, and that additional property needs to be purchased from the adjacent landowners. On this 31-mile segment of US Highway 85, we are estimating that approximately 350 acres of additional right-of-way will be needed for the project. So how does the North Dakota Department of Transportation go about acquiring that additional right-of-way? The DOT has an established process they use on every project to acquire property. That process is defined by the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policies Act of 1970, or more commonly known as the Uniform Act. The value of the property will be determined by hiring an independent appraiser that will inspect the property, review the details of the acquisition, review comparable sales, and determine the value of the acquisition. After the value of the acquisition is determined, the right-of-way agent will meet with the landowner and present a written offer of the amount that is believed to be just compensation. At that time, the landowner can negotiate additional terms of the settlement. For additional information on this process, please refer to the DOT website, dot.nd.gov, and search for the brochure shown on the slide, Information for Highway and Street Projects. So more specifically, what will that process look like on this project? We are currently working on the preliminary design, and we will get the design to approximately a 30% design level, and then we'll start reviewing that design with the adjacent landowners. We are planning on conducting the initial landowner meetings during the summer of 2025. During those meetings, we will review the estimated acquisition amounts, approach locations and any revisions to those locations, fencing and gate locations, stock dam or cattle pass impacts, utility relocations, and we will gauge your interest in providing a borrow site or wetland mitigation bank for the project. The appraisal work is planned to tentatively start in the fall of 2025 and will carry through the spring of 2026. Wade Becker with Boulder Appraisals will be scheduling the property inspections and completing the appraisals. Landowner meetings will be conducted by right-of-way agents from BJ Catermas. The initial landowner meetings are planned in the summer of 2025, and the offer will be presented after the appraisals are completed, likely starting in the summer of 2026. Next, let's review the overall project schedules for these three projects. The South and North project segments, PCN 24-243 and 24-245, are planned to be constructed first. As previously discussed, the right-of-way process will begin in the fall of 2025, with appraisals and the negotiation and acquisition starting in the spring and summer of 2026. The final roadway design and plan development will also be taking place in 2026. After the highway right-of-way is acquired, the utility companies will work on securing new easements and will relocate their lines during the 2027 construction season. After the utilities are relocated, the highway project is planned to bid and construction will take place in the 2028-2029 construction seasons, pending funding availability. The middle project segment, PCN 24-244, has a very similar project schedule with construction starting 1 year later than the other project segments. The right-of-way process will begin in the fall of 2026, with the appraisals and the negotiation and acquisition starting in the spring or summer of 27. The final roadway design and plan development will also be taking place in 2027. After the highway right-of-way is acquired, the utility companies will work on securing new easements and will relocate their lines during the 28 construction season. After the utilities are relocated, the highway project is planned to be bid, with construction taking place in the 29-30 construction seasons, pending funding availability. Just a reminder, the public information meetings are planned for Wednesday, May 28th at the Fairfield Fire Hall or Thursday, May 29th at the Belfield Memorial Hall. The meetings are scheduled to start at 5 p.m. Mountain Time with a presentation at 5:30. If you have any questions, feel free to contact myself or Garrett Hartle with the North Dakota Department of Transportation Design Division. Our contact information is shown on the screen. Now this concludes the presentation for the US Highway 85 4-lane expansion project. Once again, thank you for watching today and for your interest in the project.